Hello guys, and welcome to my video where I will be reviewing my Samsung A41, which is my phone. Let's focus on the design. The phone is constructed of glastic, which that's what Samsung call it. They call it plastic because it feels like plastic and glass. Well, it feels like plastic, but it feels like glass, but it's made out of plastic. Yeah, it feels like plastic until you tap it. It doesn't really feel like plastic. So if I tap this, see, it feels really hollow. So yeah, it's not really plastic. Well, it is plastic, but it's not glass. Well, it's not. The frame is also made out of plastic, which is not surprising. The phone fits in your hand snugly due to its small dimensions, since the entire construction of the phone is plastic, which means that it's light. When you accidentally drop it on the back, at least, it won't break. The phone's rear doesn't shatter into a million pieces. This doesn't apply to the front. More on that later in the video. The overall look of this phone is okay. It's nothing too flashy. It kind of reminds me of the Samsung S20 series, which from the back, which is from the same era, which is 2020. Both of those phones, the S20 series and the A41, released in 2020. So yeah, you can sort of tell. Moving on to the display of the phone. The A41 sports a 1080 by 2400 60Hz AMOLED display panel with a 85.9% screen to body ratio, which is higher than the S23 FE's screen to body ratio, probably due to TM Roll's cost cutting crap. Anyways, the Samsung A41's glass is protected by a variant of Gorilla Glass, but they didn't specify what type of Gorilla Glass the phone used, so we don't know if it's Gorilla Glass 5 or something, but it's definitely not Victus. Indoors, the screen does get decently bright, a peak of 400 plus nits indoors. Outside, the display brightness is okay, with a maximum brightness of 620 nits. When the sun is blazing, it is a struggle to see the content, as the colours do appear a bit dim. Colours are accurate, as the display is an AMOLED panel, and content does look pretty good due to the 20:9 aspect ratio, with popping colours and deep blacks. Contrast is excellent, and viewing angles is pretty good. The phone also features a Infinity U display, which basically is a notch on the phone, but the notch looks like a U. There is also no high refresh display, as this phone was made before the proliferation of high refresh rate displays. Let's move on to performance. For the guts of this phone, it is equipped with the MediaTek Helio P65 SoC clocked at 2 GHz with two main ARM Cortex A75 performance cores for intensive tasks like gaming, which is clocked at 2 GHz, and 6 Cortex A55 cores clocked at 1.7 GHz for like less intensive tasks like scrolling through emails and viewing content on Google News or something like that. Those are efficiency cores. This is all paired with a Mali G52 MC2 GPU, which is clocked at 820 MHz, which is fabricated on a 12nm process. All of this comes with either 4 or 8 GB of RAM, depending on which variant you have, and 64 GB of internal storage, which isn't enough in 2024. How do these numbers translate into real life usage? The performance is interesting, to say the least. When I first got the phone, the performance was okay for general usage. It was quicker compared to my previous phone, which was a Samsung J5 2017 edition. But anyways, we're just gonna ignore that. It was quicker compared to my previous phone 3.5 years ago. Like, the whole UI feels slow to operate around. When I open apps, the delay in touch responsiveness is noticeable. Frame dropping games are prominent. It's just terrible. The whole launcher has a tendency to crash randomly. It happens most often when you exit apps for some reason. This causes the home screen to disappear Sometimes this may happen randomly, and it may happen 3 times in a row for some reason. I don't know why. The keyboard also disappears randomly. I'm not joking. I'm actually being truthful about that. And so you got to type quickly. The RAM management is shit due to the device only having 4 gigabytes of RAM. So you literally cannot play Spotify when the phone's locked. Otherwise, there is a 40 to 45% chance of the phone literally closing Spotify when the phone's locked. And this causes the app to reload, causing your music to stop. This also applies when you lift to wake the phone. That also causes Spotify to crash and to reload as usual. Apparently, this might be because the animations are too complicated for the phone to perform whilst the music is playing, which is just ridiculous. It shouldn't be complicated. And running TikTok. Don't even get me started on that. The phone just slows to a snail. Okay. Keyboard disappearances, multiple app crashes when I just navigating the app. The launcher just crashes and it just overheats when I go on TikTok. All of these happen when using TikTok. As for benchmarks, I couldn't do them myself as the app just kept crashing when I tried to do that. So I had to look them up. According to Geekbench 6.2.2, it scores a single core score of 398. And a multi-core score of 1,153. And a Antutu version 8 score of 183,000, which is very, very slow in today's standards. In comparison to the Redmi Note 9 Pro, which released in the same year, and it launched like 3 months later after the A41, but still, and it launched as well. It launched for cheaper, which is almost double the amount of performance for practically the same price, and rounds behind the S24 Ultra for the sake of it. Phew, okay, let's move on to battery. The Samsung A41 has a 3,500 mAh battery or a 13.5 watt-hour battery, considering it has to power a 6.1 inch 60Hz low refresh rate display. On a normal day, I can get an average of 3.4ish hours to 4 hours of on-screen time. It was 5 to 6 hours when I first got the phone 3.5 years ago. So yeah, this battery degradation is expected, which is slightly below average, but I had this phone for 3.5 years, so it's expected. If you're not on your phone constantly, you might get through a whole day, but if you're using your phone often, you may need to carry a power bank so you don't die of a battery anxiety attack. That was a bad joke. Very bad joke. Obviously, battery health has degraded significantly by now. As for charging, this phone has a 15 watts fast charging, where you can fully charge your phone's battery in just under 2 hours. This fast charging is considered slow by now. Okay, let's move on to camera. The A41 boasts a 48 megapixel camera, real main camera, that defaults to 12 megapixels with a f2.0 aperture, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera with a 120 degree FOV, which is f2.2 aperture, and a 5 megapixel depth camera, which has a f2.4 aperture. The front contains a 25 megapixel selfie camera, which is a f2.2 aperture. Photos come out good enough for its class. You do get that oversaturated look that you get from Samsung phones, which is obvious because it's a Samsung phone. What do you expect? In good lighting or daylight, you can get some pretty impressive photos from the Samsung A41. The focus is quick most of the time, adapt swiftly to dynamic scenes. Although the focusing range is pretty shallow, which is expected of this phone. The 48 megapixel camera adds some detail, but I would only use it if you're capturing like slow moving objects or landscapes, because the capturing time is just it's very long. The ultra-wide camera is okay at best. The colours from the ultra-wide camera are inconsistent compared to the main camera. The post-processing does help, but only by a bit. The front camera is good, but you may find the image being over-sharpened in the viewfinder, probably due to the image not being post-processed yet. The video from the A41 is average. Videos just look average. They don't look bad until you get into low light. This applies to photos as well. Videos just look average. The maximum resolution it supports is 1080p at 30 fps, not 60 fps. And manual focus is not supported in the native camera app, even in pro mode, which is a joke, until you use a third-party app. 60 fps is still not supported, even when using third-party apps. Slow motion is vacant from this phone. Let's move on to software. For software, the A41 shipped with One UI 2.0 based on Android 10. One UI is feature-packed with good lock, always on display, quick share, and more. The entire software revolves around it being one-handed friendly. This phone only got 2 years of major software updates, upgradable to Android 12, One UI 4.1.1. The final software updates ruined the phone. Software smoothness is subpar due to frequent stutters and drop frames when you open and close apps, due to the underpowered SoC and heavy software. The animations of One UI 4.0 is bad in general. The animation design just feels stiff and undetailed compared to iOS, even on flagships. Security updates are now quarterly, with an asterisk. If you have any other Samsung devices or appliances, you can link them to your Samsung account, and you can have continuity features and more. For example, seamless audio switching with Samsung Buds, if you have Samsung Buds. You also have Samsung specific apps like Samsung Wallet and Samsung Gallery. The positives of this phone is that it has a in-display fingerprint scanner, which is optical, and it works 75% of the time until you use it in sunlight or when your hands are greasy. It just doesn't work at all. Another positive is that it has a AMOLED display. It also has a good camera for mid-range phones of its class. It's just fine for the average consumer at least. And it has always on display, which shows the time and the date of the day, I guess. Okay, the negatives of this phone is that the SoC is significantly underpowered, not good for longevity, and it also overheats. Speakers are bad. When you're one click away from maximum volume, the bass just disappears. It never had any bass in the first place, to be honest, and it just gets oversaturated with mid-range, which doesn't sound good at all. On my unit, the volume buttons literally don't work, so I will show you proof right now. My location. Look, this is me pressing the volume buttons. They literally don't work. They don't work at all. So every time I want to adjust the volume, I have to go to the notification panel and adjust it from there. And every time I want to take a screenshot, I have to palm swipe or use edge panels. On my unit, the vibration motor doesn't work at all. Which is common on my phone for some reason. And the RAM management is just terrible. Another negative, of this phone is that it doesn't have 1080p 60p recording, and the notification panel just lags like crazy, and edge panels have a tendency to disappear randomly due to the crappy RAM management of this phone. To conclude, the A41 is an age A series phone that doesn't have the best reputation for longevity in the future, with crucial issues like the launcher crashing and the struggles to run basic social media apps. The A41 doesn't have much life left in it at all. Although it has an incredible AMOLED display, an okay battery, and average cameras, the A41 isn't the best value for money. Should you even consider this phone in 2024? No, as this phone's performance is too slow for 2024 standards and lacks RAM for future headroom. Okay, this is the end of this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later, I guess. Bye!